Alright guys, today I'll be telling the story about the story of the Japanese high school student who was kidnapped in the late 1980s, Junko Furuta. Even though I haven't done like any murder stories or murder mysteries, now, as I was saying just now, I'm really good in telling stories to you guys, but this is going to get scary. And warning for you guys, this one is going to be very scary for YouTubers as well, especially when someone was murdered or killed. Warning guys, this may contain a lot of these kinds of scary stuff. I recommend you guys not to watch this video. If I tell the story to you guys, I think you're okay with it. If not, I can really just put like this kind of story to you guys. I don't know if it's okay or not for me to tell the story of Junko Furuta, but anyways, let's continue with this. So, on the 25th of November 1988, Mignano and Michael was wandering around Misato with the intention of robbing and raping local women. Unfortunately, that happens a lot in these countries. And definitely, if you've heard of the movie Lost Souls, which is a Chinese movie, it's definitely the same thing where a lot of people who are from East Asia getting kidnapped and being smuggled and raped by gangs. I suggest you guys not to watch that movie Lost Souls is because this can scare many kids to death. Unfortunately, I cannot show this video to you is because I don't want to get into trouble, and let's just keep this one kid-friendly related, because if I show this video to you guys about this, which is called Lost Souls, warning, this may contain lots of violence and lots of bleeding and anything you can see in this video. Consider this one as very inappropriate. I suggest you guys not to watch this movie. This movie is scary and it's not suitable for kids under the age of 18. Now, what I was really going to say is that this movie did contain a lot of killing and some blood. I'm not really going to show that video actually. So what I was really going to say this is, I'm sorry that I scared you. I'm just giving people a warning not to watch that movie Lost Souls, because this one may contain a lot of violent scenes and it's not recommended for children under the age of 18 to ever watch this movie, even though that movie was actually age restricted. Now guys, I'm so sorry for that one, because I know I saw that clip. It was definitely one of the worst movies I've ever watched. And unfortunately, what I was going to say is that don't watch this movie alone. Never ever watch that movie alone. This movie may contain a lot of these scenes, which contains a lot of violence. I recommend you guys not to watch this movie. This movie may contain a lot of PG rated R scenes. They are not suitable for kids, and I don't recommend anyone to watch it. But even though I'm 18 right now, I still do not recommend anyone to watch this movie. I know this movie is banned in this country, but unfortunately for that, you can still find it on YouTube. But anyways, let's continue, and I'm so sorry for the talk right here. At around 8:30 p.m., they spotted Furuta riding her bike home. She finished her shift at the job. Under Mignano's orders, Mignano kicked Furuta off her bike, and suddenly he offered her a ride home. But he fled, fleeing the scene. Witnessing the attack by coincidence, he approached Furuta and offered to walk her home safely. Unfortunately for that, Mignano had lured her to nearby warehouses. It revealed his Yakuza's connection. So a Yakuza is actually a member of a transitional organized crime that synthesized and originating from Japan. The Japanese police and requests that the police call them buriden, while the Yakuzas call them more than that. The English equivalent term for Yakuza is actually a gangster. Now, what I'll just say is it is very, very scary, guys. Not to mention that, but I can't believe what these boys did was such a murderous thing to Furuta. Not to mention, not to brag about this, this one is very, very scary. Unfortunately for that, he raped her in the warehouse again in a nearby hotel, threatening to kill her. From the hotel, Minyano called Mitako and her other friends, Jo Osuda, Yawushi Watabe, and bragged them about the rape. Not mean, guys. I'm not reading from the Wikipedia. I'm so sorry about this. I'm so sorry I scared you all. I'm so sorry. Okay, but anyways, to keep her in a cavity, he allowed numerous people to sexually assault her, and these ones are called gang rape. Now, gang rape happens everywhere around the world, especially Japan, where people are yakuzas. But in Malaysia, what I was gonna say is that people are definitely the gangsters, I guess. Now, what I'll just say is that one is very, very scary, and I do not recommend anyone to watch the Junko Furuta mystery movie. It is in Japanese. The movie was released in 2004, and also they have a movie called The Oil Drum Movie. It's a Japanese movie, and unfortunately, guys, I can't show you that one. Unfortunately, I don't want to scare any one of you guys. I don't want to scare anyone. I'm so sorry about this. I know I'm not doing this just because of a copyright strike or just because it breaks the rules, but unfortunately, I have to do this for no choice. And for what I was really going to say is that, yes, I'm doing this video is because I want to tell the story about Junko Furuta. But anyways, guys, let's continue. So eventually, on around 27th of November, Furuta's parents contacted the police about her disappearance. To discourage further investigations, the kidnappers forced to call her mother to say that she ran away. Now, what I was really going to say is this is kind of a bragging statement where people are forced to call their parents to say that they have run away from their home. So eventually, they forced Furuta to stop the police investigation. When Minato's parents are present, Furuta was forced to act his girlfriend. They dropped his presence, and when it became clear that Muruta's parents would not report them to the police, the Minatos did not intervene because they were aware of Minato's Yakuza's connections and realizations, and because their son was increasingly violent towards them. The group held Furuta for 40 days. They repeatedly beat, raped, and tortured her. According to that, the forehead definitely did shave her parts right here. Not gonna mention it. Forced her to dance while naked and masturbate in front of them, and left her in the balcony in the middle of the night with clothing. Now, what I was gonna say is that I can't believe what these boys did was definitely a murderous thing to Furuta. I mean, why would they do a thing like that? Like, why? Why would they do that? Now, my opinion is that Junko Furuta could have just ran away quickly, but the boys decided to do something to her. However, they inserted objects into her parts. They had a lit match, a metal rod, a bottle, and force-fed her with mass amounts of alcohol and water. She was forced to smoke multiple cigarettes and inhale a pain thinner. Wow, that was so brutal of them. Now, what I'll just say is this is the scariest part. I know many people do that, but it's the fact that why should they? Well, people are totally crazy. They're totally crazy when they just don't like a person. Like, it's like sad, you know? It's sad to see like someone getting brutally murdered for nothing, you know? In one incident, Minuto repeatedly burned Furuta's legs and arms with like lighter fluid. Now, I actually have saw a video with the fluid lighter, and guess what, guys? That video was apparently age restricted. Now, I'm not gonna lie this one to you guys, but definitely it is the scariest part that people would ever see in their life, you know? It was really, really scary. I don't know why people would do that, but unfortunately for that, they do that just because they don't like a person. So eventually, by the end of December, Furuta was severely malnourished after being fed only small amounts of food and only milk. Due to her severe injuries and burns, she was unable to go to the downstairs toilet, and she urinated on Minato's floor in extreme weakness. Now, what I'll just say is that these boys are totally sick in the head. Why would they murder someone who is a girl? I mean, a lot of murders do happen in Japan and around the world. They murder kids, they murder teenagers, they murder everyone. Now, what I'll just say is, I'm sorry for scaring you guys. I didn't mean to say that, but definitely this is just a warning for you guys. If you ever go out alone in the night, have someone to accompany you. Don't go around midnight or any kind of time when it's the evening or when it's the dusk. We do not want anyone to get kidnapped by bad people. Even though the person will trick you for just trying to say like, can I have a ride home? You should always say no to the person. If the person wants candy from a person's car, never ever take them, or never ever try to follow the person to go back home. Because of this, many people are kidnapped. They are tricked. Instead of going to their real homes, they just put them into a storeroom. Now, this is totally like brutal, guys. It's very brutal, you know? Furuta's experience was directly alerted by the brutality of facts. Her face was so swollen that it was difficult to make out a feature. Her body was severely crippled, giving out a rotten smell, and the 4 boys lose sexual interest in her. As a result, the boys kidnapped the 19-year-old woman who looked like Furuta on the way to work. Now, what I was just saying is, there are many bad people, especially Yakuzas, in Japan. Now, what I recommend to people is, please do not go alone. When you're going to work or when you're going to school, when you're going out with your friends, do not go alone. Going alone isn't the correct choice. You need to have friends over. Sometimes bad people have bad intentions, especially when people are just trying to say that, can I have a ride home? I don't want anyone to do that one in real life. Don't end the same fate as Furuta did, because she got kidnapped by 4 boys and was and unfortunately, what I was really going to say is, she died from her injuries after the 4 boys did something bad to her. So, eventually, on January 4th, 1989, which was 3 years since Phil Lynot's death, after losing her game of mahjong against another person there, Minyona decided to vent his anger towards Furuta. In their anger, they poured lighter fluid on her thighs, arms, face, and stomach, and set her on fire again. Now, what I was gonna say is that burning a person alive, that is not okay. This is considered murder. This is considered brutal. This is considered very, very disturbing to other people. Now, what I was really going to say is that they do have a movie called Concrete, which was based on a true story about the story of Junko Furuta, who was a 17-year-old high school student who was kidnapped by 4 boys and was raped, tortured, and abducted. Now, I'm sorry, I cannot show the video to you. I cannot show the movie to you. It is very, very violent. It may disturb people, and eventually what I was going to say is that movie is definitely going to make you have nightmares. So eventually, I forgot to say something like that. They continued to punch her like a punching bag. They lit her like a candle, dripped hot wax into her face, two short candles into her eyelids, and forced to drink her own urine. She was kicked and fell into the studio and collapsed full of convulsions. She was bleeding profusely, and pus was emerging from affected buds. The four boys covered their hands in plastic bags. They continued to beat her, drop an exercise ball onto her stomach several times, and lastly for 2 hours, Furuta succumbed to her wounds and died instantly from her injuries. She was only 17 years old. That was such a young age. Less than 24 hours after her death, Minato's brother called to tell that Furuta was dead. Unfortunately for them, they were afraid for being penalized the murder. The group wrapped her body in blankets and shoved her into a travel bag. They put her body into 55 US gallon, which is 210 liters, drum. They filled it with wet concrete. At just around 8 p.m., they loaded it and disposed the drums into the cement truck in Kyoto in Tokyo. On January 23, 1989, Mignano and Ogura were arrested for a gang rape for a 19-year-old girl who they were kidnapping in December. On March 29th, two police officers came to interrogate them as the woman's underwear was found in their dress. During the interrogation, Minato believed that one of the officers were in capability of Furuta's murder. They think that Joe Otada was actually involved in the crimes against Furuta. Minato told the police where to find Furuta's body. The police were puzzled by the confusion, and they were referring to the murder of a different woman and a 7-year-old son, which occurred 9 days to Furuta's abduction. The case still remains unsolved today. Unfortunately, the police found the drum containing Furuta's body. For the following day, she identified the fingerprints. On April 1st, 1989, Joe Otorga was arrested for sexual assault. Subsequently was arrested for Furuta's murder, and the rest were wannabe Minato and Minato's brother followed. So the other components who participated in Furuta's abuse were officially identified as Tsuto Nakamura and Koshi Akara, who was charged with the rape of the DNA and was found on the victim's body. I can't believe people would just do something to a girl like that, especially for teens. They just kick the bike off and just kidnap them? Now, that one may be a murder mystery, but that one apparently was the scariest murder I've ever read. Because of this, what I was really going to say is that Furuta actually did die of a traumatic shock because the injuries that she suffered were very severe, and she succumbed to her death. It was scary, scary. Very, very scary for people to experience that. Junko died before she had turned 18 on the 18th of January 1989. So eventually, the identities of the boys were sealed in court, and they were all juveniles of the crime. The journalists believed that the Shikten Minion magazine discovered their identities, however, and published them. So, the accused did not deserve the impunity allowed. All four boys pled to guilty, committing bodily injury that resulted in death, then murder. In 1990, a lower court was sentenced that Hiroshi Matsura was the alleged leader to this crime, 17 years in prison. But he appealed the sentence. The Tokyo High Court, Judge Ruichi Janssen, sentenced him to an additional 3 years in prison. The 20-year sentence is the most longest sentence in Japan before life imprisonment. He was 18 at the time of the murder, but Mignano's mother reportedly paid 50 million yen in compensation was ordered by the civil court in seeing their family home. Mignano was denied parole in 2004. In January 2013, Mignano was rearrested due to fraud. This was due to insufficient evidence. He was released without charge later that month. So, eventually, Noboru Hono was actually sentenced to a 4 to 6 year sentence He was resentenced to 5 to 9 years by Judge Reggie Estes. He was 16 at the time of the murder, and fortunately, Furuta's parents were actually dismayed by the sentences that their daughter's killers has won a civil result, and the parents of the Nevada Minato. However, Minato was arrested again for attempted murder after beating a 32-year-old man with a metal rod and slashing his throat with a knife. Now, Yakuza Wannabe, who was originally sent for 3 to 4 years prison, received an upgrade for 5 to 7 years. He was 17 at the time for the murder of Junko Furuta. For the Roland's crime, Joe Toga actually served 8 years in juvenile prison. Before he was released in 2004, he was 17 when he murdered Furuta. So after his release of the family name Kazuma, when he was supported by the lawyer, he was the role of kidnapping and the torture of Furuta. In 2004, in July, he was arrested for assaulting Takeshi Oto, an acquaintance that thought his girlfriend would get involved with him. Ogara tracked Tsuto down, beat him, and shoved him into the truck. Jojo from Adachi, which is the city in Japan, to his mother's bar in Misato. He allegedly beat Zana for 4 hours until he threatened to kill him. So fortunately for that, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. He was killed and knew how to get away with it. Okura's mother allegedly vandalized Furuta's grave, unfortunately, and ruined her son's life. Now, many believe that the sentences were too light for the severity of the crimes committed. So, the last part I'm going to read is the aftermath. So, Junko Furuta's funeral is held on April 2nd, 1989. One of her friends' memorial address stated, "Jun-chan, welcome back. I never imagined that we would see that way. You have been so much pain and suffering. The happy we have in the school festival look really good on you. We'll never forgive you, and I hope the principal has presented you a graduation certificate so we can graduate together. All of us, Jun-chan, there's no more pain, no more suffering. Please rest in peace." Furuta's intended future employer presented her parents in their uniform, would have worn the position if she had presented. The uniform was placed into a casket at her graduation. At Furuta's school principal presented in a high school diploma, which was given to her parents. The location near Furuta's body was actually have been developed in the Wachio Park. At the time, the Japanese people were concerned about the epidemic of the violent crime called the American disease. So eventually, what I was really going to say is that this was actually one of the scariest murders that happened in Japan back in 1989. Junko Furuta would have turned 51 next year if she was still alive. And this was actually the 33rd anniversary ever since the corrupted murder of Junko Furuta. Now that story was definitely way scary because it just took me like around more than 10 minutes to read all of this. I know it's because I just wanted to do like some stories like murder stories, like murder mysteries, murder stories. Doesn't matter to me. Isn't this? You can make stories if you want. Just be careful about what you say, what you show. But there's only one problem for this. Now what I was really going to say is that this story was very, very scary. Eventually, I did not want to show the pictures to you because it's very, very graphic and I can't show the pictures to you guys. Now, for Junko Furuta's murder was definitely one of the scariest murders that people would ever see. I know I heard about that story before. I know I've watched some of the videos before, but I still can't show you the footage. That footage is very, very scary for YouTubers, especially people who are making this video. So, the reason why I'm doing this recording on my iPad is because I don't want to show the videos, I don't want to show the pictures to you. It's very, very scary for people who are not comfortable with this. So eventually, guys, that's all for now. I really need to say about the story of Junko Furuta's murder. And apparently, guys, again, I was saying is I am sorry for scaring all of you guys. If it's not comfortable for you, I suggest you guys don't watch these videos that people apparently did show saying that Junko Furuta was murdered at that time. Unfortunately for that, these videos are definitely age restricted because they actually go against the community guidelines. But anyways, guys, I'm so sorry for talking so much. And this is me, Huiling the Tomboy Gamer, signing off.